The title of this video is taken from an old song by the Goo Goo Dolls titled Broadway. While the video is primarily a reflection on my life and my subsequent journey of discovery, the song plays a key component in the lessons I have learned in this journey through life, not necessarily due to any emotional indigestion or other surreptitious, senseless, sentimental sensitivities, but because of a very realistic, if not somewhat cynical, view on life without meaning. As I have noted in multiple videos, I do not consider myself to be anywhere near the greats, but I do perhaps share one value, or curse as the case may be, in common with many of the greats and many others like Joe Rogan, at least based on his comments, and a reflection about what keeps him awake at night. My mind is constantly wandering from point to point. That is not to say that it traverses the ethos in some haphazard or random fashion, but it does take me across virtually every connection as I view life and even any task I may elect to undertake. When I speak about thinking in systems, people often presume that I see each and every component of the system, but that's not actually the case. I cannot generate clear and concise mind maps, as I have serious issues with linear logic. I do not always clearly define or even necessarily see a given starting point or a given end point, but instead I see an entire system as it functions or as it should function, and I see virtually every challenge or problem before it occurs, which again is more of a curse than a blessing, but it's the way I see things. In terms of systems, about the best analogy I can come up with is a very large and complex jigsaw puzzle. I see the completed puzzle, and I see which edges are going to frazzle, which pieces have tabs that do not fit precisely, and I even see those pieces that may fit perfectly and precisely but do not provide any support for the surrounding pieces. I do not see each and every individual piece, but rather the completed puzzle and which pieces are going to require adjustments or require special attention. Like Joe Rogan, and I imagine the same is the case for many great thinkers and even just overly curious souls throughout the ages, I often have a difficult time sleeping as I constantly think about literally thousands of different things when I'm merely trying to lie down and rest. My mind refuses to shut down unless it is done so through the use of drugs or alcohol. And while I long ago gave up the majority of my vices, especially ones that could result in me forfeiting my freedom, or at least the extent of the freedoms and liberties that we are able to retain in modern society, when I was a young lad, I discovered the capacity for alcohol to numb my thinking to a degree that was sufficient to allow me to sleep. I began my journey down this road at the Clock Tavern, where I entered once with some older friends I played sandlot football with. I was actually 12 the first time I was allowed in to drink, though I was 13 before they discovered I could drink behind the bar and keep my money straight at the same time, and they offered me $20 a shift, all the draft beer I could drink, and when the bar did close, I could actually sleep unmolested by the many thoughts normally traversing so rampantly between the synapses in my brain. The Clock Tavern was the proverbial blue-collar neighborhood old man's bar, replete with multiple pictures of former patrons who had died, gracing the balance or the pelmet for those of you in the UK who prefer pubs, that fell from the ceiling over the bar itself. From time to time, someone would inevitably ring the bell and buy the house around, and on some of these occasions, a toast would be made to those patrons who had died, but who were being remembered in their own way. Lacking then, as I did, any real sense or desire to accomplish anything meaningful in life, and only trying to find my place in a world that seemed to have no real place for me, I often found myself pitying not only those who had died, but the seemingly great many patrons who would soon have their pictures added to the mantle, only to be remembered for the occasional toast in what was, by all rights, even if very comfortable in its own right, nothing but a local dive. I must regrettably admit that I have likely wasted more than 40 years of my life trying to find my place in this world, only to discover that I really do not have any place where I fit in well. Many of those academics and scholars whom I have idolized are lost in singular ideologies and often incapable of seeing anything outside of their respective views. I've met some truly wonderful people along this journey we know as life, in the corporeal form at least, but again, none who are willing, even in the unlikely case that they were capable, of discussing the more esoteric nature of my personal beliefs. Somewhat ironically, perhaps, I have found two exceptions to that rule, both in the form of people deemed unfit to function in the real world. It was here that I began to look at the more esoteric nature of life, and it was also here that I began to look at and examine the true nature of governance, politicians, corporations, the military, and even at literature with a more discerning eye and from a more philosophical approach to life. It was here also that I began to understand the horrors of partisanship and the more ominous tones from the likes of Bernays and the utilization of his works to oppress the individual. It was also here that I discovered that people will almost inevitably consider things from their own perspective based on their individual perceptions, and here that I discovered it is imperative to consider virtually every aspect of everything you want to seriously learn about. It was also here that I began questioning not only my own sanity, but my reasoning, my logic, my train of thought, my path of thought, and how best to discover the often hidden, even apocryphal truths of life. It was during the course of many late-night conversations here with my two friends who were quite literally, according to the normal people, insane, yet who remained capable of keeping up with the very diverse, esoteric, and far-reaching nature of our philosophical understanding of life. It was here also where I began understanding the more subtle and nuanced nature of life, and here that I first realized that if we do not leave something behind that is in effect larger than the self, that we are all effectively in the same boat as the old people sitting around in the bar waiting to die. We hope against hope that at least our pictures or some form of memory will last to the point where it extends beyond the lives of our grandchildren. Mind you, I'm also the proverbial introvert, and I have, without any intent of irony, used the moniker clearly to identify myself as being anomalous, and also wishing to remain anonymous, in part due to my anomalous nature and introverted ways. That may perhaps better explain the title of my YouTube channel. Oddly enough, and perhaps even ironically, I also believe that this may be a great benefit in the ongoing efforts I and the other people within the foundation are undertaking in order to leave the world a better place. Looking around at the normal people in society today, though, I certainly have no desire to be normal in virtually any sense of the word. I do not care who gets the credit for the accomplishments, and I do not want my name plastered on buildings or street signs, and I wouldn't even be doing this in the first place, except nobody else was doing it. I am personally very content with a minimalist lifestyle, though I would someday like to have running water again and a home capable of withstanding a tropical cyclone without requiring more tie wire to hold the roof down. Maybe the ability to raise my own livestock again, and even a full pantry would be nice. If and when I do reach that point again, I can gladly donate any monies not needed for bills or whatever I happen to be working on at the time to those who are in a better position. I don't say that out of any desire to become a martyr. I merely say that I'm very content with very little in the way of material possessions. I do take some hope from the modern generation as they wake up to the harsh realities of the socioeconomic and socio-political positions that we have put ourselves in as a species. I worry, however, about the ever-shortening attention span and the inability of the modern generation to actively engage in critical thinking and their seemingly more narcissistic nature. Hopefully, at least, these observations are merely the ramblings of a disgruntled old goat like me, and I will, at least in that context, be proven wrong beyond any shadow of a doubt. I also take great consolation from the fact that, historically at least, a mere 3 to 5% of the population can quite literally change the course of world history. While I'm not a professor or even a teacher, never mind some great academic or scholar, perhaps the observations I make here will someday help someone to find themselves on the same path, with the same goal of leaving the world a better place than it was when we got here. As a very wise and scholarly friend of mine once noted in our all too infrequent and few conversations, we will see what we will see. So, yeah, if you have any questions about what we're doing, if you have any interest in what we're doing, if you have any concerns about what we're doing, we would love to hear from you. We're always here to discuss it, and we look forward to hearing from you. Please let us know in the comments below, and thank you. Bye. Please like, share, subscribe, and comment below.